Increasing media coverage is being shown literally everywhere in regards to the current state of affairs between Russia and Ukraine. The most vocal parties regarding the ongoing conflict are the United States, NATO, and of course, Russia and Ukraine. But what is really going on here? And how did tensions get to this point? Let's take a look back at past events first. Please also keep in mind this is a dense topic, and while I may make future videos focusing on specific incidents within the conflict, this video is a very basic overview of the situation. Following the Russian Revolution, over the next few years, the Communist Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR, was formed. This included, of course, Russia, but also the modern day countries of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed his regret in the past that this government collapsed in the late 1980s and early 1990s as the USSR dissolved into the independent countries we know today. For those of you that don't know, President Putin used to be an agent in the KGB, or the Soviet Union's version of the CIA or MI6. Anyways, in August of 1991, the government leaders in Ukraine declared their sovereignty from the USSR. The Soviet Union was gone, and Ukraine did not join the Commonwealth of Independent States, which was a partnership between Russia and 8 other former Soviet republics for intergovernmental cooperation in politics, military affairs, trade, and many other important issues. Throughout the 1990s, Ukraine suffered economic decline as a result of corruption, and the Ukrainian economy did not stabilize until the end of the 1990s. Ukraine also voluntarily gave up the former USSR nuclear weapons in their possession. Now, this next part is a complicated issue with a lot of different parts, so I'm going to vastly simplify it. In 2004, Viktor Yanukovych, who was Ukraine's prime minister and friendly to Russia, won the presidential election. However, the Supreme Court of Ukraine ruled that he had won based on rigged elections. Shortly thereafter, his main opponent, whose name was Viktor Yushchenko and friendly to the European Union, fell gravely ill and accused the Russians of poisoning him. All of this eventually resulted in the peaceful Orange Revolution, bringing Viktor Yushchenko and his prime minister, Yulia Tymoshenko, to power, while casting Viktor Yanukovych as the opposition. Yanukovych returned in 2006 as prime minister again, but once again he was ousted shortly thereafter and Tymoshenko returned to the post. In 2010, Yanukovych won the presidential election with 48% of the vote. In 2013, Yanukovych began taking steps to partner Ukraine closer with Russia as opposed to the EU. This resulted in the violent clashes of the Maidan Revolution. The Ukrainian parliament voted once again to oust Yanukovych as president, and Petro Poroshenko replaced him. It was this ousting of Yanukovych that prompted Vladimir Putin to basically take over the Crimean Peninsula by force, although it should be noted that a controversial referendum vote by the citizens of Crimea resulted in a 97% vote to annex with Russia. Separately, in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine, armed men declaring themselves as local militia supported by pro-Russian protesters seized government buildings, police stations, and other important government facilities in several cities and held unrecognized status referendums, resulting in the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics being proclaimed in the Donbass region, which is in eastern Ukraine and bordered by Russia. The government of Ukraine attempted to quash these uprisings by force using their military, but the fighters of the self-proclaimed People's Republics held the regular military back, and both sides ended up agreeing to a ceasefire compromise known as the Minsk Protocol. The ceasefire has been repeatedly violated by both sides of this conflict. The issues of Ukraine and Donbass largely faded from the mainstream media during the presidency of Donald Trump in the United States, with the larger outlets focusing on issues allegedly concerning Trump and Russia, along with other issues like North Korea dominating headlines at the time. However, with the election of Joe Biden, media coverage has shifted briefly to the conflict between China and Taiwan. While this is still a real problem, focus has recently shifted to the point where Ukraine, Russia, and NATO dominate the headlines and nightly newscasts. President Putin has allegedly massed over 100,000 troops on the Ukrainian border. Major political leaders in the United States, such as President Biden and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, continue to insist that Russia is about to invade Ukraine at any time. There are several well-made YouTube videos out there speculating what such an invasion might look like. I will share the links to these videos in the description. For his part, President Putin has publicly stated that he does not intend to invade Ukraine. However, most people don't notice that there is usually a stipulation added to his "I have no plans to invade Ukraine" speeches, and that stipulation is where NATO comes in. NATO had a rival during the Cold War known as the Warsaw Pact. This was basically the Soviet Union's version of NATO. Several members of the former Warsaw Pact have since joined NATO. Russia sees this as a rival encroaching on their sphere of influence. Russia does also not want to see its rival's troops stationed on its borders. Ukraine has aspirations to join NATO, and President Putin has called Ukraine's admittance into the alliance a red line, implying that he will escalate the situation if NATO or Ukraine takes the membership process any further. Now that you have some background, here's what's going on. On September 14th of 2020, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky approved Ukraine's new national security strategy, which provides for the development of the distinctive partnership with NATO and with the aim of membership in NATO. On the 24th of March in 2021, Zelensky signed a decree approving the strategy of deoccupation and reintegration of the temporarily occupied territory of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. In March and April of 2021, Russia started to mass thousands of military personnel and equipment near its border with Ukraine, resulting in the biggest mobilization of Russian troops since the annexation of Crimea in 2014. Concerns over an invasion soon abounded. Satellite imagery showed Russia had moved armor, missiles, and heavy weaponry to the border region. In June of 2021, Russia pulled some of its troops back from the border area. In July of that year, Russian President Vladimir Putin published an essay titled "On the Historical Unity of Russians and Ukrainians," in which he reaffirmed his view that Russians and Ukrainians were one people. In October and November, Russian troops began returning to the border regions, resulting in numbers back well over 100,000 troops by December of 2021. On December 1st, Russia accused Ukraine of deploying 125,000 troops, which is basically half of the Ukrainian military, at Donbass to confront pro-Russian separatists. Between November and December, Russian officials claimed that Ukraine had violated the Minsk Protocol. Russia accused Ukraine of creating provocations by moving heavy artillery weapons towards the front lines where separatists were fighting with Ukrainian forces. Russia began a slow evacuation of its embassy staff at Kiev beginning in January of 2022. By mid-January, an intelligence assessment produced by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense estimated that Russia was in the final stages of completing a military buildup at the border, amassing more than 127,000 troops. Among these troops, 106,000 were land forces, with the remainder being naval and air assets. Furthermore, there were 35,000 more Russian-backed separatist forces and another 3,000 Russian forces in rebel-held eastern Ukraine. The assessment estimated that Russia had deployed Iskander missile systems near the border, many stationed within striking distance of Kiev. Russian intelligence activity was also said to have increased at this time. On February 10th, 6 Russian warships capable of landing tanks and troops ashore, assigned to Russia's Baltic and Northern fleets, arrived at the Sevastopol naval base in Crimea. On that same day, Russia announced naval exercises to be held in the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Ukraine strongly protested against the decision of the Russian Federation to block parts of the Black Sea, the Sea of Azov, and the Kerch Strait under the pretext of holding regular naval exercises. Separately, to the north of Ukraine, Russia and Belarus began joint military exercises, Allied Resolve 2022, which took place close to the Belarusian border with Ukraine, with about 30,000 Russian troops and almost the entire Belarusian military involved. On the 14th of February, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said units from Russia's southern and western military districts had begun returning to their barracks following the completion of exercises close to Ukraine's border. However, U.S. President Joe Biden said that he could not verify such a report, and on February 16th, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that Russia continued the military buildup. On the 17th of February, both U.S. and NATO top officials stated that Russia was actively looking to conduct a false flag operation or a staged attack against the Russian people to justify an invasion of Ukraine. The threat of the invasion remained, in U.S. President Biden's words, very high, adding that he believes it will happen within the next several days. On February 17th, the Ukrainian government accused Russian separatists of shelling a kindergarten in Luhansk using artillery, injuring 3 civilians. The Luhansk People's Republic said that its forces were attacked by the Ukrainian government with mortars, grenade launchers, and machine gun fire. On February 18th, the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic ordered mandatory evacuations of civilians from their respective capital cities. Which brings us to today. What do you think will happen? Will President Putin and Russia invade Ukraine despite the threat of economic sanctions from some of the world's major economies? Do you think this whole situation is being escalated by individuals not party to the immediate situation? Discuss in the comments below and let me know what you think.